Welcome, my art friends, to the studio. Okay, we're on to our complementary painting assignment here. I just have one small request. So if you look at my head here, I'm asking everybody to put on their still life caps. Huh? Is that pretty punny or what? Okay, so we're going to move on to our still life. Our objective here is to work a complementary colored still life. So I'm going to take a couple steps back. And you'll notice right here I've set up a little still life. So this still life is our Christmas compliments, if you will. It's the red and green combination. Let me go ahead and show you my palette so you can see what we're doing there in terms of getting set up as promised. So here's my easel. I have a couple little tips and tricks of the trade that I wanted to show you first. The first one right here is just the fact that I have an old peanut container, and that peanut container is just simply filled with a whole bunch of rice. Little trip to the dollar store, bag of rice in there, and now I can keep my brushes standing straight up. And the nice thing is, if I get a lot of paint on the handles or anything like that, I don't have to worry about that transferring over to my hands. Okay. I have a little watercolor kit down here, a little portable watercolor kit. Certainly not required, but can be something handy. And I hope you've enjoyed this class enough to where you consider taking the watercolor class. But I'm going to show you one of my little thumbnails just using a little bit of watercolor, and I left that on there. As far as the setup, to get initially set up, I have a little bit of red and green, and so you can see in the far corner there I have a range, so I'm able to mix quite a range. And then on the flip side I have a yellow and a green, in addition to white and black, though I put down a little bit of blue here, and you can certainly substitute blue if you would like with black. In terms of being able to make mixtures. But that will give you a good idea of just how to start this. You're more than welcome to break into other colors if you so desire. But that's just how I'm going to set up my palette to get started here. All right, well, let's move on to the canvas. And you can see I have taken the liberty of toning that canvas a little bit. To save us a little bit of time as we get started. And attached to it here I have a series of thumbnails. These are just really, really quick thumbnails. I had my still life hat on, so to speak, and so I just cracked them out using a Sharpie. Okay, the upper right hand corner I decided to take a little bit of watercolor to it just to show you what's possible. Again, in no way required. When you turn in your thumbnails, what I do need you to do is to mark them either A, B, C, D, or in this case, you can see I've numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4. I kind of liked my first thumbnail there, that quick little thumbnail. Again, as far as doing these, all I need to see is a little hatching, a little cross hatching. Think through your value structure, where your darks will be, where your lights will be. If you come back to my still life down here, I'll pan over a little bit. You can see I have a lamp set up here, and then I just have 3 or 4 objects. I guess it's 4 objects total. So I have a little red bird pepper shaker. It's part of a salt and pepper shaker, a nice little green plant, and this nice vase that I picked up when I lived in northeastern Colorado in a place called Sterling when I taught at Northeastern Junior College before coming out to Pierce. But anyway, I would suggest doing something like this, keeping it relatively simple. The book there happens to be The Complete Angler by Walton, one of the greats. Okay, so what I'm going to do mainly is my prime objective in this little tutorial is just to help you get started working on this particular painting. So I'm going to square up here. I have my paint set up as we talked about, and I'm just going to talk about how you might want to start. So initially what you're going to do is you're going to share that thumbnail with me on Canvas. We're going to go through and figure out which is going to be your favorite thumbnail. So in my case, I was pretty happy with this one, number 1. So that's what I'm going to run with. It may end up that you want a combination. So maybe you like the composition number 4, but you like where the plan is on number 1, and you can mix these things. And we'll talk about that on the discussion board. So that's step number 1, and you need to submit that. That's worth 2 points of your total 10 points on that painting. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move into painting. So I have a bucket of water, my nifty-difty little brush setup that I showed you earlier. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mass out the basic shapes. And I may come back to my thumbnail and just use that as a little bit of a reference here. So I'll go ahead and just fold it. And it might be a little off camera, but no big deal here for you guys. And I'm just going to set it up above. And that's going to be my guide for getting this painting started. Okay, so you can just pin it above or tape it above whatever working surface you have. I know with this COVID-19, it's making it a little bit difficult in terms of where you might be setting up. But a kitchen table could work with a couple books propped under if you're on a budget. A little table easel might be the ticket for some of you, and I'll send a little link. I was looking online at Dick Blick and on Amazon, and there's some little table easels that tabletop easels that are not too much money that I can send your way here. So, all right, I'll just set that in there. Don't want to take up too much of your time here. Apologize. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get started. I have my thumbnail, and I'm just going to go ahead and map in my basic shapes here. So really starting with some lines, there's no problem there. I'm working arguably maybe a little bit darker than you might want to, just so you can see the shapes here. So I'm just massing in my basic shapes. I'm thinking through those basic forms just like those videos. And if you go to the Sketchbook Extra Credit tutorials, there's some really nice videos there on just thinking through your basic shapes, which is all I'm doing to get started, right? I'm thinking of things like spheres, cylinders, ellipses, squares, rectangles, really keeping it simple, right? Here I have my book, okay. Complete Angler by Walton right here. Okay, and I'm just going to think through that as a basic form. I'm sticking just to the outlines at this point. One thing that does help this composition, and one thing that's going to help a lot of your compositions, is overlapping. So can you see how each one of my objects has a certain amount of overlap? And that's not by accident, okay? Now, the nice thing about an organic subject matter like this little plant right here is, I mean, you can take all sorts of creative liberties and just mask that in. But notice here how, coming back to our overlapping discussion, I really like that element there that's overlapping that part of the cool green vase that we have as part of our still life. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mask this in. I'm trying to work fairly quickly for you guys here. So I'm just going to map these bigger shapes in, and this painting is going to kind of evolve, right? I mean, if I'm really happy with my shapes, they can kind of remain. But on the flip side, again, if I want to, I like the way that curtain kind of folds back here, so I'm going to put that in there. If I like the initial drawing, then I'll go ahead and keep it in there. Full disclosure, I'd probably come in and spend a little bit more time ultimately refining this. But again, if you get rid of that white of the canvas like I did before you came and joined me here on camera, that's going to save you a lot of time, so you can just get rid of those white values. Okay, here is a little bit of a trick that a lot of students don't necessarily realize. I'm going to come in here and put this handle in. Got to be kind of close. I don't want that handle to get too close to the corner, or else I'm going to end up with a little bit of what we call a tangent. I have to raise that just a little bit. That's no problem. Okay. Good. I think we're going to be all right there. The thing I want to mention to you now is the fact that probably where I want to start next is going to be, I'm going to lower this. There we go. A little less glare on there for you. Sorry about that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the background first and just assign that background. And it's really a lot more useful to incorporate a temperature into your painting. So I'm not using a pure black in anywhere in my painting. I want to incorporate a little bit of color. So it might look like black, but I'm actually incorporating a little bit of blue. And where am I starting? Have you noticed where I'm starting right now? This is sort of key. I'm starting in my background and map in that background first. So you can see here I'm painting around the handle of the jug or that vase, little mini jug, I guess. All right, so I'm just working really, really thin. I happen to be working on a piece of masonite because it's something I just happen to have at home. You're going to be working on that pre-stretched canvas in your kit. But I'm just looking at bigger shapes right now. I'm not really at all worried about these shapes. I may end up modifying them later. That's totally fine. Truth be told, this color here could get modified, right? And I need to be pretty careful to stay within my complementary structure, which is the red and the red and green structure. Okay, because those are my complementary hues. But right now, I'm just mapping out something that's going to be value-based. Okay, and I really want to knock in my dark values. So coming back to our shadow sphere lecture here, now I'm going to have some pretty strong cast shadows. And you don't have the benefit of seeing the still life right now, but at the bottom of this little pot here, there's a pretty dark cast shadow, so I'm just going to include that here. Same thing here on the bottom of my my vase. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm not super worried about the details. I'm not really worried about those little smaller shapes. Here's the thing, like, let's give you an example. If you're painting a portrait or you're drawing a portrait, you don't want to draw the eyelashes and the pupils of the eyes and the highlights and all those things first. But rather what you want to do is just really mass in those general shapes. And that's all I'm doing here. But notice how I started in the background. I started in the background and then gradually I'm going to work my way forward. Once you've done that and you've established all your darks, then you can come in, and one way to do this is to start to work really thin and just mass in your lighter midtones. So for example, I could come in here and start to assign some temperature and color to this fun little plant here. I got to thank my good friend who brought this over after my wife came out of surgery successfully, thankfully, and grateful for that. Anyway, but it was super nice of her, and it's the perfect little painting, still life object. I thought, hey, this is great. I'm going to bring this out for this painting, and it's going to be wonderful. All right, now the painting might look a little bit like a mess at this stage, not a big deal, but believe it or not, the bones of this painting are really quite good. I have my bigger objects masked in, I have my darker shapes. Here's my goal I set for myself this quarter. So I want to try to keep all my tutorials under something under about 15 minutes, and I'm looking over here and I'm about the 13-minute mark. So okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mass in this shape right here next. Okay, I'm keeping my layers pretty thin, and I can go back, I can modify these things if some things aren't quite right. This is why that knowledge of the shadow sphere is so important. I'm thinking through where my light source is coming, my highlights, my coarse shadows, etc. So we're coming towards the end of this tutorial, but you can see eventually I'm going to start massing it in. It's going to take some shapes more like this quick little watercolor here. Okay, but you're going to start ultimately by creating a series of thumbnails, and then you're going to move over to your canvas, and you're going to start to mass that in. So I hope that was clear enough there. Sorry, the picture quality might not be the best on that. And I'll kind of pitch this over here a little bit and zoom back so you can sort of see where we arrived. But anyway, with that, you should get a good idea, right, in terms of how to get started. It's still roughed in. That's the point of this video, is just to give you an idea. So work with those bigger shapes, work from big to small, start with an outline, work the background to the middle ground to the foreground. I think that's going to be a good recipe for you. Don't be afraid if you're going to make mistakes. Don't worry about matching the color perfectly. Just refer to all the information I shared with you on the YouTube links. And then also the screencast is going to be a great review for you. So, all right, get your still life hats on. Anyway, have fun. Remember, art's therapeutic. In these crazy times, just have fun. Let loose. Don't obsess over the grade. Please don't lose sleep about it. I'm grading on overall effort, I promise. So you have me on Zoom if you need me. Set up an appointment anytime. And I can't wait to see your thumbnails. And after that, I'm even more excited to see your awesome paintings. So everybody has a little bit of painting under their belt by now. Congratulations on completing your value charts, your shadow spheres, and your super duper other assignments. I'm blanking at the moment, so forgive me. Anyway, it's time to sign off, my friends. All right, happy painting. We'll talk to you later. Take care. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.